All right. Hey, everyone. Mark here. Mark Pre-Markets. Thank you for joining me for another Bitcoin video analysis session. Let me adjust this microphone a little bit so it's not always in the way. Okay, cool. You guys should be able to hear me all right? All right, cool. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. I am simulcasting on TradingView. Okay, so let's say hello to everyone. So again, if you're new to the stream, let me just explain to you how it works real quick and what we're going to do. First thing, we're going to take a look at the economic calendar. Second, we're going to go over this situation here with this Bitcoin, right? The title of today's stream is New Levels, Adjustments, and Expectations based on this 27K breakout. And I want to talk about the forecast or basically the scenario that I outlined in my TradingView article yesterday. Okay, so we're going to cover those things. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the trade scanner and all that as usual. So let's get started, shall we? I'm going to try to keep this around a half hour. I usually go a little over. All right, so let's first do this. Okay, this is for educational purposes only. For investment advice, please consult a licensed investment advisor. Also, if you want to share what city or what country you are from, that's always a fun fact. I'm streaming from the greater New York City area, also known as Northern New Jersey. Okay, and Stian says over here that they're having Indian summer over there in Belgium. Oh, okay. We must be on the same latitude or something because it's been unusually warm here, but we see that kind of weather, a lot of times this month. Anyway, all right. So TradingView people, if you could see me over there, say hello. Feel free to say something. Also, if you can't see me, make sure you refresh the browser. That usually solves the problem. Someone always says, "Hey, I can't see you." Just refresh the browser. All right. Now, first things first, let's talk about that economic calendar, shall we? Let's get that out of the way before we get into the chart here. And let me say hello to my people. We got Stian. Stian has been doing some great work. Okay, thanks to him, we have a nice refined trade scanner. All right, we still, there's some work that still needs to be done on it, but man, it's come a long way, especially those people who have watched it go from raw signals to what we have now. We have a lot coming up, so just stay tuned, okay? Over the next week or so, I should be able to show some new things off. But anyway, if you're interested in any type of exchange, okay, maybe you're looking for a new one, maybe you don't have one and you're looking to try one out, check the links in the description. There are 2 affiliate links in there. One is for Bybit, one is for MEXC. Those basically, if you subscribe, right, you register, you fund an account, and you trade on that account, Stian actually will get a small fee for doing that. Those are his affiliate links, but that helps him support the community immensely, right? And all these great things that we're seeing is a result of his hard work. So please keep that in mind if you'd like to support the community. Also, there are other links in the description as well. You can check those out. All right, so let's keep going here. Let's talk about the economic calendar before we get into some of these other topics, okay? So this is the first week of October, the beginning of the 4th quarter. So we have quarterly reports mostly next month. The stock scanner shows all of those, right? But what do we have this week in particular? Anyone want to take a guess at the economic calendar? I like to sometimes ask you guys to fill in the blanks on the economic calendar because this is something that you should be doing on your own anyway, especially if you get involved with Forex pairs, okay? Anyone want to take a guess on what's important this week? Okay, so Stian says non-farm payrolls, Friday. All right. Anyone else? That's a good one. Anyone else want to take a guess? Because pretty much this week, unemployment rate. Right, so that's Friday is pretty much the only report really worth talking about. There's always, of course, other things in the economic calendar. But the whole point of this exercise is really to understand what carries the most weight, okay? A lot of these reports from these other countries, they don't move global markets, not really. They're only important if you have day trades, maybe you're in a Forex pair and it could temporarily move that pair, but otherwise they're not major market movers. Non-farm payrolls, which is the first Friday of every month, is a major report. Now, even then, a lot of times it's a non-event. We don't really see much from it, but you have to be careful because if there are any surprises, that's a global market mover, right? It moves the dollar in a big way, and then everything moves as a result of that. So you want to keep that in mind going into non-farm payrolls, and you want to make sure that you're not taking any ridiculous risks going into that. It's about mitigating risk, right? It's not about taking trades and thinking you're going to catch whatever. Who knows how that report's going to come out? All right, so yeah, you pretty much got it. Steven asked me, do you think that Bitcoin could go higher with the current dollar setup? Well, we'll take a look at that. Now, Steven also mentions in the next comment here that the bonds, he says here, the bonds are still going lower, okay? That's a very important piece of information for this whole environment. If bond prices are going lower and dollars going higher, that puts a cap on Bitcoin. All right, we'll talk about that, but that's not a positive. Lower bonds are typically not a positive because that means money becomes more expensive, and Bitcoin, being a speculative asset, needs money to move. That's why this movement, we're going to talk about this movement. We're going to talk about what this means. Hey, Malad, good to see you. Man, if no one shows up on TradingView, Malad at least is the only guy who supports me over there. Thank you, Malad, for showing up. Okay, no one shows up. I don't know what's going on the platform. I guess people just don't like me. All right. Anyway, so where are the gold ads? No one wants gold anymore. Right. Right. Well, that's funny, Alex, that you mentioned that. Remember that back in May, gold is going to go to 5,000, right? Anyway, all right. So before we talk about this Bitcoin chart, I want to point something out here. Hey, how are you over there? All right. TradingView. Good to see you guys. Thanks for Steven sneaking in there twice. I know your name now. All right, cool. So thank you guys. Thank you. So before we talk about this chart, and I guess, before I make the chart bigger, I will make it bigger. I want to point out something. I want to ask you guys a quick question. How many of you are familiar with a company called My Forex Funds? Anyone familiar with that? Hey, Advance, how are you? All right, good to see you. Mr. Farhad. Oh, from Iran, how are you? Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you. Isaac, how are you? From Turkey. I remember that. All right, anyone familiar with My Forex Funds? Anyone familiar with that company? It's okay if you guys say no. They specialize with Forex traders, and I know a lot of you probably are not Forex traders. But anyone familiar with this company, My Forex Funds? Now, I'm a little bit behind. I guess I can give a boost. Oh, yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, do me a favor over there. If you can, press the boost button, press the like button, but I haven't given any valuable content yet, so I don't want to ask people too soon. Okay, so none of you guys are familiar with this. Okay, so this is an important thing. Now, I just became familiar with this myself. These events occurred a month ago, okay? I'm a little bit behind on the Forex business curve. So there's this company called My Forex Funds, and what they do is they are a prop firm, a Forex prop firm. So what a prop firm does is you take some kind of test, right? You have to get through some type of whatever they have criteria, and if you can, then they give you access to capital, so you can trade a $100,000 account and so on, right? But that comes with a price. You have to pay for this test. So you pay $500. You hope to get through this criteria, right? And then if you do, you get access to this capital, which means now you could trade bigger positions because you have a larger account, right? That's the premise. Well, these firms have grown in popularity over recent years. In fact, I was researching this particular company because I was considering doing a prop thing with my trade scanner. I figured, okay, I'll use the signals from my trade scanner and see if I can get through one of these tests and get a large account. Okay, so I was researching them, but that's as far as I got. Well, a month ago, this company, okay, it sounds like they make money from the tests. It's exactly right. That's how they make their money. Well, let's get into some details here. So a month ago, there's a reason why I'm bringing this up. And I'll get to the point quickly. A month ago, they received a complaint from the CFTC. When you receive a complaint or get sued by the CFTC, you got problems, okay? So this is a public complaint. You can Google it, right? And you'll read the complaint. And I highly recommend that everyone read this public complaint. The reason is, if you want to truly understand how this business works, whether it's Forex or coins or whatever, right? This business of traders and retail traders in general, read this complaint. It's long, it's boring, but you want to know what? In these public complaints, they expose a lot of things that the company would rather you not see. Okay, so a couple of important points. FTMO is one of them. All right, this is one of them, Alice. They do the same thing. It's the same business model as my Forex funds. So I'm bringing this up now. You're like, oh, who cares? Well, let me explain to this. Let me explain. There's 2 points I want to make about this. All right, number one, the company has all these. They're basically fraudulent. All right, and they were paying out customers from their profits, right? Not from actual customer making money in these accounts, right? These accounts that they said that they're giving you access to. Anyway, you could read the details about that. But there's something in particular I want to point out. Okay, number one, this opportunity of having a Forex prop firm was something that was basically open back in basically 2015 to 2020, right? This company started out in 2021. Not once on YouTube have I ever heard of anyone saying, hey, there's an opportunity to open Forex prop firms, because it's actually not that hard to open one of these firms. You just have to have money to pay out the winners, right? But here's the point that I want to make. This company in 2 years, which was owned by one person, netted $170 million. Okay, so you want to know where the money is? That's how you make money. They had 24,000 customers that actually had these accounts that they could pay out on. But here's the second point that's most important. All right, so first, read the complaint so you can understand how this business works and how basically, if you went to their website, I think it's still there. You read their website, it talks about how they're on your side. They only win when their customers win. This company was doing everything it possibly could for their customers to lose, because their profits depend on customer losses. Yet they say that they want customers to win. Okay, so that's the truth. That's one truth that I want you to read that complaint. Now, second, here's the more important part. If you read the complaint, they highlight a special section where there's a conversation between this owner and an employee, okay? And the employee is like the risk manager or something like that. Now, the conversation was about a trader. The trader was making too much money, and they owed him $100,000, and they were saying, we need to stop this guy. There's evidence of this, okay? Now, these are all allegations, of course. No one's been charged with anything, but the complaint is there. You can read the complaint. Now, so the point was, this guy made all this money, and their only reaction was, we have to stop him. We need to figure out how he's making this money. Do you want to know what he was using to make this money that they owed him? A bot. That is my point. The trader was using automation. He wasn't sitting there behind his computer messing around with charts. He used automation, which again goes to prove my point that automation is a key part of the future in this business. If you want to succeed in some way, you need to employ automation. This complaint, by the way, this trader occurred in 2022. So, he was doing some kind of arbitrage thing. The point is, they weren't even interested in how he was making the money for their own purposes, right? Like we'll take whatever he was doing and make our own system. They were more interested in learning how he was making the money so that they can prevent other traders from doing the same thing. So what does that tell you? All right, another important lesson. I'm going to get off this point here in a second. One more important lesson about this is there were a lot of fake gurus that were endorsing this company, and they're saying, "Oh yeah," right? And they had their affiliate links for this company. Do you know that some of these fake gurus, they had to basically, now they had their foot in their mouth, right? Like, I'm sorry that if you got caught in this and you opened an account as a result of me, blah blah blah. But you know what they're saying now? Well, we should just be men and move on. And I have another one for you here. This other firm, they're much better. So I suggest you open an account there. If anyone is pushing one of these type of companies on you, okay, a prop firm, you get what you pay for. They're all the same. Just saying, okay, these are allegations, but this is how the business works. There is fraud here. And I suspected that a long time ago. I've talked to some people about it. When I found out the business model of these companies, I'm like, man, how do they even operate? Because they're outright lies. Anyway, all right, I wanted to make that point. You guys get the point. Okay, so automation. This is why I built my bot. Okay, because I believe that that's really the future. One of the big advantages to a bot is it removes you from the equation. So no more second guessing, right? And yeah, my bot isn't perfect. If you go to my history channel for the coins in the Discord server, there's like 10 losing trades in a row, right? So someone who doesn't know any better, like, man, this thing sucks. But if you actually look at the trades, they're all the same trade, okay? If Bitcoin is called short, and it calls Litecoin short, and it calls Dogecoin short, and it calls Matic short, and one stops out, they're all going to stop out. This is an important point, right? You don't take all the trades. You should not be all 10 trades. You should only be in 1 or 2 when it makes those calls. But anyway, we're still working on the refinement process. I just want people to understand that so they can look at that information from a more informed light. All right, enough ranting. Let's talk about this Bitcoin chart, shall we? Let me see what people are saying here. Okay, so I heard about that one. You get right. So now, Alice, now you know the truth. Okay, again, Google CFTC, my Forex funds complaint, and you will find out what I'm talking about. Read it carefully. All right, now let's talk about Bitcoin, and let me make my chart bigger so you guys can see. I know I've been ranting for like forever over here. Oh, wrong button. Okay, there we go. All right, now. So let's get into this. Hey, Peter, good to see you. Let's talk about this. Now, if you read my TradingView article yesterday, I talked about Bitcoin, right? And I talked about, in that article, I talked about a scenario, all right? Now, a scenario and a forecast are not the same thing. When someone says forecast, I'm going to forecast this. Basically, they imply that I believe this is going to happen next. Okay, and I believe this with some degree of certainty that this is going to happen. As you know, I don't make forecasts. I look at scenarios because I know markets are random, right? Now, so I said basically that's what this little squiggle is right here. In my article, I was saying that basically the structure before this squeeze here, the structure testing this 27.5 resistance favors a pullback back toward 25K. Now, I also said that there was no setup to go short. So another key point, right? Just because you're at a resistance and just because you have a particular scenario in mind doesn't mean that that scenario is going to play through. The market may prove otherwise. And in this case, the market chose otherwise, which means it negates this scenario right here that I drew on the chart. It's negated because obviously the market broke the resistance. So I can remove this now, right? That is how you have to play this game. You say, okay, here are a range of scenarios. Let's see which one the market chooses. And then whichever one the market chooses, you go from there. If we had this pin bar, for example, that we have right now, if we had this pin bar over here, and this was basically a double top, then that scenario that I was illustrating there would have been much more probable. Do you see how that works? Okay, that's a very important point. A lot of people, they get stuck like on an opinion when really it's just one scenario out of a range of scenarios. It's possible to, I think, assign probabilities to a smaller range of scenarios. That's what I attempt to do. Compared to, now let me just give you a quick example to give you insight. Let's say one possibility of Bitcoin is that it can go to 0, right? That's a possibility. But is that a probable possibility? Like, is there a chance? Like, what are the chances that that Bitcoin is going to go to 0 tomorrow? It's probably 0%, I would imagine, right? I mean, anything's possible, but you get my point. That's extreme, right? Bitcoin going to 0. So that's a possibility that we don't have to consider right now, all right? But what about the possibility of Bitcoin breaking out to 30K or Bitcoin pulling back to 25K over the next week? Those are plausible possibilities. Those are within a range of reason. And that's what we're trying to assign probabilities to. Does that make sense? Okay. EU from Friday. Oh, nice. Oh, the euro. Yeah. So Alice took this euro short. You see, we have what I call, we set up, we have raw signals that still come out, right? They're not refined. They don't go through the bot yet, right? The bot takes the raw signal and then it refines it. And then it comes out with the stop loss and take profit. Well, Alice has access to the raw signals and he just jumped into a euro short. I'm glad you make money on that because he had to figure out his stop loss and take profit. But now he knows that those were raw signals. Anyway, I should probably hide those from you guys so you don't get confused. But I figured no one would really pay attention to those anyway, since there was no stop loss and take profit. I'm glad you made money with that. Okay, the bot does okay if you understand the context around the bot. Now, so let's, speaking of context, so you understand what I'm saying here about scenarios compared to a forecast. You want to have a range of scenarios, right? Step one. Step two, you want the market to confirm something for you so that you could say, okay, the market is choosing this path or the market is choosing that path. You're not choosing the path. The market is choosing the path. So you are passive in the process. That is how you have to be as a trader, especially when you're not using automation, right? So now let's fast forward to where we are right now after the result of this 27.5 break. Because again, the title here is New Levels, Adjustments, and Expectations, right? So let me talk about something here. This low to this high, right? This entire structure, it's a three-legged structure, is it not? Can you see that, right? This is structure A right here. You see that? This is structure B over here. Okay, this whole from this low to this high is A. From this high to this low is B, right? You see that? This is B. And then this is C, right? This leg right here is C. Three-legged structures, in case you don't know, are typically corrective structures. These are not trend structures. These are not impulsive structures. These are corrective. Now, corrective of what? Well, the bigger picture, now we're talking about context, the bigger picture here is range bound. And I believe Alex mentioned this in the chat. The bigger picture is range bound. And this is the range, okay? From this low to this high basically is the range. We are still inside of that range. So there's no trend on the larger time frame when we're talking about the midterm trend. I mean, this dates back to June. So we can argue that basically midterm trend is range bound. And if that's the case, this is this three-legged structure is corrective. If that's corrective, after the three legs are in place, chances are you get the next leg, okay? And now look what we have now, which is right in line with that idea, bearish pin bar. So this right here, if anyone got long this and you see this now, that is not what you want to see, okay? That means this is a fake out. And you have this resistance here, right? This basically this little resistance peak right here, and you're still within that, and it faked out and gave it back like pretty quickly, right? Within 1 day. So if this candle closes like this and it takes out that low, that's a short. That's a swing trade short. It's aggressive, but it's a short. All right. And that short can take this thing back to this area right here. That's what I'd be looking at, right? Almost like this is the head forming of a head and shoulders, possibly. I'm not calling it a head and shoulders, but you get the idea. This could be the beginning of that, right? Now, let's talk about some levels adjustments, because we do have this 27.5 break. How meaningful is that? Well, it was meaningful when this candle was up here, okay? When it looked like that, that was pretty meaningful. But the fact that we're rejecting so quickly like that makes it questionable now. So as far as minor support and resistance levels, this is what you're dealing with. 27 to 27.5, which is basically that area right there. That is your minor support. Minor. That means that the support is only relevant for day trades and maybe swing trades, like the type that the trade scanner or the bot would take, right? Only relevant for that. That's not a major support, right? The major support really comes into play in this area here. That's really going to be the area where broader bullish reversals are likely to develop, right? So why is this important? Because if you get buy signals in this area, right, from the trade scanner, which is very likely if this thing doesn't really pull back that much, right? The trade scanner is going to basically classify this movement here as bullish momentum, and it's going to start looking for longs. But if this thing gives it back swiftly, and this thing pulls all the way back, and this thing gives back the entire green candle, if it does something like that, you see that? Let me erase these so you can see it a little better. If we get one of those where it just gives back, kind of like back here, right? Then that's bearish momentum. So if you see this, I would, and a long happens to come out, I would step away from the longs, okay? Avoid the longs in this scenario. Does that make sense? Using context with the automated signals, using context with the trade scanner really improves your chances, because you could say, oh, okay, you know, there's a conflict there. I don't want to get mixed up with that. So right now, this is bullish momentum on the short term, but on the bigger picture, we're nothing more really at a resistance, right? This resistance is still in play. So 28.5, or you want to say 28.5 to 30K, that zone. What was the high on this thing? 28.5. Is that the high? 28.592. Okay, that's the high. That's this high right here. So we can say, and if you notice, right? If you notice, we can go back here like this, right? I mean, look at this. Do you think that's a coincidence? That's not, right? That's an old support now acting as a resistance. My students know what that means. So it shouldn't be too surprising that we got the pin bar, right? You can't really trade in front of that. You need to get the evidence from the market, but there it is. So again, 28.5 is basically your new minor resistance. 28.5, you could say 30K is your major resistance. 27.5 to 27 even is your minor support, right? That's basically going to be this area right in here. That area may be good for some day trades or swing trades on the long side, like little pullback, okay? It would look something like this. See if I could draw that for you real quick, right? It would look something like this. Little pullback, okay? And then bounce. That would be the long side if long signals were to develop there, okay? But if this candle, like I said, if you're playing the short side of this, which is playing the bearish pin bar, and that low of that bearish pin bar needs to be taken out first, then this thing in that momentum builds, right? You get some bearish momentum into that. You're looking at, again, you know, possible moving back into the 26.5. What is this area here? 26.3, 26.5, this area right here. Does that make sense, you guys? So what I shaped for you here, these are the expectations that you need to have going forward to help shape the decisions that you're looking to make. Before you can even get to that, you need to understand, are you looking for day trades? Are you looking for swing trades? This really is kind of irrelevant for investing, right? This really has nothing to do with long-term. Anyone that's saying that this thing's going to 40K and 50K, those people are clowns. Please don't believe those people. You will find out the hard way if you do. All right, so let me just see what kind of questions I got here. All right, hey, DJen, good to see you. Okay. Okay. Right. So you guys, so hey, how are you? All right. I'm just looking at this. Let me see what I have on TradingView. Do you think BTC can be detached from other indexes? No. Well, it can. All right. You know what? I'm not going to say no, like with 100% confidence, because Bitcoin can do its own thing. But Bitcoin, I believe there's a relationship more with the NASDAQ. Okay. So sometimes that relationship is stronger than other times. Let's take a quick look here, right? Well, speaking of relationships, let's first start with a quick look at the bond market, right? Look at this. I'm going to go to a weekly chart. This is 10-year note futures. You see this? Does that look bullish or bearish to you? Anyone want to answer that question? I think that's pretty obvious, right? New lows on the bonds. Do you know what this means? Let's take a look at US 10Y. Okay. US 10Y. Do you know what these are? These are interest rates. Now, interest rates are pushing highs. What do you think that means? This is bad. Okay. Look for bank failures. That's what this is. Now, I don't know how the banks are getting. Maybe the Treasury is keeping things under control right now. But if this continues like this, there's going to come a point where they can't contain things anymore. Prepare for bank failures, because these banks are stuck in these bonds, and they're going the wrong way. Okay. And like I said, they're not going to tell you that the bank failure is coming in advance. They're not going to give you some kind of advertising to take your money out before there's a run on the bank. You have to understand that the bank is about to fail, and they're not going to tell you. So that's what this environment we're going into. So with something like this going on, you can forget Bitcoin rallying or altcoins rallying. Money is getting more expensive. So that's why anyone that's clamoring about, oh, Bitcoin's going to go to 50K, clearly they're not paying attention to the bond market. All right, I don't care what anyone says about halving and all that nonsense. If we don't have cheap money, speculative assets, there's a much lower chance that they rally. It's that simple. It's called the business cycle, and it's a real thing. All right, so yeah, that's why I have no confidence in these things going anywhere. This rally, if they sucked you into this, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, there's no potential, is very low for continuation. Now, you mentioned something about the dollar index. Let's take a look at the dollar index real quick. Right, DXY. Look at this. That's just a reflection of interest rates. We shouldn't be surprised, right? Dollar is rallying. This is going to be bad for all the basket of other currencies, all that other stuff. But we shouldn't be surprised, right? This thing is in a bullish trend, just like that rates chart I just showed you, right? Which is the inverse of the bonds. Does that make sense? You should always check that first. This is not a bullish sign for the markets. This means that there's a cap on rallies. If anything rallies, let's see how the S&P is doing. If anything rallies, it's probably not going to go very far. What a surprise. Okay. Not going to go very far. Remember a couple of days ago, oh, the market's rallying. No, it's not. All right. Not in the face of bonds pushing lows. Now, I know there could be a lot of drama and a lot of political stuff tied into this. Please don't get mixed up in that. Pay attention to the charts and pay attention to the economic relationships, right? Like the business cycle. People don't talk about that. Most people don't talk about it. All right. They don't want to, either they're not familiar with it, or they just want to pretend it doesn't exist. Okay. So I answered that Bitcoin question. Yeah. So these things rely on cheap money. Anything that's growth oriented, anything that's speculative relies on cheap money. Bitcoin is not going anywhere as long as the market looks like that. As long as bonds look like that, I'm willing to bet Bitcoin is limited. Okay. Its potential is limited. I think, okay. Responsible for, okay, interesting. So yeah, watch out. I'm telling you, watch out for these banks. All right, so you guys got that? Any questions from students? Let's see, students. I answered that question. Here's Alex. Okay, the gold. I was told BRICS. Oh, right. Remember that nonsense? Here, let's just take a look. They were saying that the BRICS currency was going to be this powerful nonsense. Please don't listen to what people say. Just watch. Charts are really where like the truth is. Let's take a look at gold, XAU, USD. Probably not going to do well. Look at that. Not going to do well when dollar is rallying. Look at that. Remember all those gold experts? Buy gold. Gold is going to break out. Gold is at 1830. Man, what a hammering. Let's take a look at weekly gold. This is really nasty for gold. Look at that. Okay. Look at that. That's pretty interesting. Getting into some interesting supports here, right? Nice pullback. I wouldn't buy it. Not yet. I mean, I like pullbacks and broader trends, definitely. But this thing has a lot of problems, right? Just looking at the economic front. And that's what you have to look at with something like gold, right? Gold with the dollar. I told people months ago, when gold was pushing the 2000, I said, stay away from this thing because it's not going far with interest rates doing what they're doing. Interest rates have not been cooperative the entire year. Okay, so I knew that relationship is also what prevented me from getting involved in the stock market at the 21 peak. All right. Anyway, so good questions, people. Any other questions? So if you haven't pressed it yet, now you can press the like button, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel if you like the content. Again, like I said, we have quite a few things on the way. Check the links in the description. If you want to join my Discord community, it's free. We have trade of the week in there, and those trades have been coming out. I think GM was like the first trade that came out that finished as a profit. So you can see the record of the trades for Forex, right? Stocks and Bitcoin and the altcoins. Right? You could see those as a free member. We also have a community chat where Alex and a few other moderators are always available to ask questions. And, you can just, if you have a question about something, or if you're new and you say, hey, I need help, someone is always there to help you out. Okay. So check that out. Degen says here, perhaps a word about Bitcoin and looking to its previous cycle. Okay, good question. Previous cycle is pretty much meaningless. All right, you can't do that in this environment, because these previous Bitcoin cycles, let's just go back to a weekly real quick. I'll address that question because everyone gets this wrong. Okay, you have to accept that markets are random. If markets are random and efficient markets is true, which I strongly believe it is, especially since that most of the volume we deal with today is algo volume, is the majority of volume. Algos are rational traders. So markets are efficient, which means there's no way to know the future. You can't go back and look at a previous cycle and then somehow and basically project it forward and say it's going to repeat, because you have to understand back here during these times, okay, the economic environment was not the same. All right, we're talking about 21 into 22. Do you realize from 2020, right, into 21? I know they like to talk about the halving and they talk about all this other nonsense, but do you realize from 2020 to 2021, interest rates were zero? Also, not only were they zero, right, the Fed put the Fed's fund rate to basically zero. We were getting stimulus checks in the mail. Remember those? If you're not from this country, then you won't remember those. But we were getting, the government was mailing us money. They would mail us checks, okay? Everyone got a check for like $1,000 or more. They got a check in the mail from the U.S. Treasury. Where do you think that money went? Where do you think it went? I wonder. Where has all that money went? I wonder, right? Altcoins. Remember the altcoin rally? So that was the economic effect of that. You have to keep that in mind, right? That was the stimulus behind all this, nothing else. So all this nonsense about happening and all that, they either don't know what they're talking about, or they just need content to sell or something, right? Please don't go by that. Go by the interest rates, because interest rates are king. That's what determines how the world works, nothing else. Yeah, there could be variables in Bitcoin that maybe give it some catalyst here and there. I mean, look at the stock market back in the summertime. We had a bullish stock market from basically May to August. And what was behind that? You know what was behind that besides hype? There was some treasury action back in May. All right. And then you had all that AI hype. Markets can be irrational, but if the bigger picture is not facilitative or supportive, they're not going to be irrational for long. Right. So when we go back, I bring up that S&P as an example, because again, back then, if you listen to all the experts, right, the stock market is rallying and this is going to be amazing, blah, blah, blah. And now look, okay, how come no one calls this pullback? How come no one calls this pullback by October? Oh, I don't know. Markets are, they're just hard sometimes. How come no one was calling this? Right? This rally was pretty much stimulated by nonsense. So keep that in mind. Markets can be irrational, but if the general environment is not facilitative, then they're not going to be irrational for long, right? When reality starts to set in, and that reality comes from interest rates. Okay, that's the way it works these days. Maybe if we have other things to take to become catalysts, things that we don't know about yet, then that's another story. But I don't see them, and I don't know how we're going to get things going when there's no cheap money floating around. You realize this whole cheap money thing also works on a global level. It's not just this country. There's something called the IMF, right? Which is all the central banks, they get together and they get to make decisions together, right? As a group. You realize they control the global supply, right? And speculative bubbles, which is what everyone wishes for Bitcoin, right? When they're saying Bitcoin's going to 60K or 80K or 100K, that's a speculative bubble. That's what they're referring to. And in order to have that, you need cheap money. Where's the cheap money, right? Until we have cheap money, you can forget these dreams. They're just dreams. I believe, one day we'll have cheap money. Interest rates are seasonal, and interest rates at some point will come off. they'll become lower and money will get cheap again. This is a cycle. It's called the business cycle. And when money gets cheap, right? And usually it begins with leadership from the central banks. That's usually where it begins. They start saying things like, well, monetary easing, stimulus, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to raise rates anymore. We're going to cut them, right? I don't see any of that talk anywhere. All right, you guys? Okay, so yeah, guys, do me a favor. Press the like button. Press the boost button if you like my content, and please subscribe to the channel. All right, so I think I answered all those questions. All right, people. So I'm over my time as usual. I hope you got value from this content. Again, check the links in the description. Join the Discord community. Ask questions. There's a lot of free stuff available to you guys, okay? I want to see you guys at least protect your capital. I had a student meeting a week ago, or a few days ago, and I asked my students, what is your number one priority, right? And they got it right. Protect capital. Right? What is your number two priority? Mitigate risk. Those are the only two priorities that you should have in this environment. Okay. Making money is a result of those two things, because this is not an easy environment. Protecting capital should be number one. And I want to help you guys accomplish at least that. All right. Anyway, so check that out. I do have the trade scanner. If you have questions about that, ask me, because we have some things on the way that I think people are going to be interested in once we have them prepared. All right. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your evening, wherever you are in the world.